Looks like things are going. Let's give the audio a check here. Okay. Always got to check the audio and video when you go and get the live stream going. Hope you're doing well this morning. Might have some new faces in here today after a successful evening with the Friends O Figma yesterday. It was a good time had by all. And super excited to have you folks along. I saw a few of the new subscribers come through last night after our event, so that's always good to see a little boost there. Um, we've got a very busy day, lots of meetings. So now that we know that YouTube is running, I'm just going to go ahead and get this underway so that we can get on with our day and get feedback back to the people that submitted work. Greetings, one and all. Chris Courtney here, New Pragmatic. It's time for the feedback loop. So good to have you along for today's edition, ending up the week. Really, actually, pretty light morning compared to the last couple of days. Alfonso is in with some new work, and Abby's eking in as well. And there are times when we underthink things, and there are times where we overthink things. And when we're working on prototypes, there are sometimes that we lose track of how refined something is. And I want to address that with Abby this morning, because she had some questions talking about how do I make this more impressive as a design. So I want to take a peek at that, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. So we've got Abby's Figma prototype here for her Fresh Market project. She's working on like landing pages, and she's particularly concerned. She left me a note here. Styling here for the components is the styling is here for components, but how do I make it pretty? Now it's so bland. I know clean and simple is a thing, but I want a pop of photos or something. The landing page is nice, but the logins and FAQ and account settings and checkout are so blah. And I want to pause and think about this. When is the last time you went to an FAQ page on a website and it was just like, oh my gosh, that's really impressive. Wow. Like, the FAQ page is there for utility. Okay. So I would keep that in mind as you're designing through some of these interior pages. They're not all meant to be showcases, okay? And if they are showcases, they're probably drawing attention away from their purpose. So that's one thing I would think about. Another thing I would think about is, while you've created a lot of the components and you've got things on screen, we haven't gone through and really animated this yet. We haven't begun connecting the, or at least I don't think that that's happened yet. Let's go through here and take a look. So I see a little bit of animation, or I see a little bit of connectivity, and maybe there's quite a bit down here. So maybe these, and it looks like some of this is still here from the wireframe. But this is where you can do a lot with animation and delays, and how are these, what are the hover states. I would look to interactivity as a place where additional refinement can come in, and that sometimes escapes us when we're thinking about things in terms of how does it look. It can look fairly sedate until you begin to interact with it. What are the flourishes of interaction that you've woven in? Like, how does a modal come in? How do your hover states work? Things like that. but just as a, as we're looking at this, like I'm just going to come in, like this is your dash or your account dashboard. And I think that one of the things you might consider is, like if you're looking for to make it feel more expressive, um, right now you've got these components where the photo is measured in. Maybe the photo comes to the edge of those components. You have these borders on certain elements. Maybe you go thicker with the borders. Maybe what would happen if this was a 20-point border instead of a, what is it, like 2? Uh, I know this has got a border on it. Yeah, it's 2. It's weird. Weird. I can. So what do you do in those instances? Here, it looks like that needs to be refined. It's like running off the edge there. But my login page, I don't need the login page to be particularly expressive. If you want it to do something, this is where a lot of companies come in and they'll do like half the screen is welcome back and the other half is some sort of image display. Like there's some sort of visual there. So maybe bringing images into areas like that is an idea. Um, you had a spot like up here where it looked like yeah. So here you're trying to clearly do more, right? But is it drawing attention away from the subscription plans? Should the subscription plans have photos, or should there be some sort of photo leading this page? I only really the answer to that, but I would say that isn't it odd that the spacing between subscription plans and the plans themselves is more than between the plans and the next section? Some of this is just spacing. It isn't cohesive enough yet. So maybe that is where you bring an image into subscription plans, and then I would probably, if that was the case, I would get away from this situation you have down here where it's like an image and then a block and then the continuation of that image. I think right now this part is very bottom heavy by comparison with what you have up top. Um, Here again, I personally wouldn't take any attention away from these, but this is where, like, is there, as I hover over, is there some sort of pop of color that happens on these that draws attention, that makes this more expressive? When I'm looking at this spacing wise, is this too much spacing? Should this be a little tighter? Should all of these be somewhat tighter? I'm not here to really judge. I'm just looking at I'm hearing you say these aren't expressive enough, and sometimes too much spacing can be a problem there. Another question is, should this be, because I see space for 4, should this be 4 instead of 3? Right now you've got 9 meals, so obviously if you did 4, that would be a weird measure. So just something to think about there. So I would look at color. I would look at inclusion of photography as 2 of the adjustments to make. I see like order details. Like this is a perfect example. You've got this modal. Like, well, how does the modal appear? Like, how did it get here? What does that interaction look like? And if is the border border and or color usage here expressive enough? There's a lot more that you could do if you wanted to elevate that. I'm mostly concerned with function first, but you are asking the right questions now that you're here. I look at something like this and I go, well, this is tight. I could probably space this out a bit, particularly through here, because I'm not seeing like order details and cost and delivery are here, and then meal selected are down here. But want to separate. I want more space between these elements, and maybe I go bolder with the line work or with the border. I mean, there's more that can be done here, but my big question is, how is this all coming together when we're going through the prototype? What is that interaction like? And that's where I think your best upside of return on refinement is going to be. Okay. Let's come over here to color accessibility. Now, first of all, Alfonso did a really good job on part one, which is really just getting into the tools. We use Color Oracle, or I suggest that we use Color Oracle, and I know that he was doing that here. And Color Oracle makes it really easy to come through and throw these into a mode where I can tell what modes are being displayed. And when you look at like Protanopia, this again is tone based. Here these aren't the same, so there's something clearly not quite right there. That's Tritanopia. That's now we get the pinks. So just being able to use the tools. It's almost like every time somebody goes through the color accessibility exercises, I get a note inside of the Discord channel. It's like, wow, I didn't know these tools existed, and that's the entire point of the exercise, just to get you to load the tool, use the tool, see what the tool does. This is not it won't necessarily change how you go about designing, but it will change the considerations and what you think about as you're designing. So I guess in a way it does change how you design. It changes your thought process a bit, and we're always trying to eke ourselves toward being more aware that people view the world differently, because we're all a little different, and sometimes we have challenges viewing certain color combinations. Another thing we often struggle with is seeing the difference in colors. And obviously this one, if you look back over here in part one, this exercise actually uses this twice. Clearly that white on that light blue background is just an absolute disaster. You changed it, that's nice. You could obviously go further, but that's going to pass Stark. What probably won't pass Stark is this right here. So that's a miss. One of the reasons why it won't pass Stark is this red and black is just rarely, if ever, going to work. This is where I'm looking for you to come over here and make it either go this direction with it, or go this direction with it, or go this direction with, there's all sorts of things that we can do to make this work. Additionally, you nailed the headline, which is great. I'm looking also for this to take a step up. You can either do that, you can come in like that. This is the classic designer screw up, in my opinion, in that we come through and we put this on, we put an off-white. We put an off-white back here. First of all, I just want that to be white. It's just easier to read if it's just white. You can see that pretty easily. This interviews pops out because it's pure white versus this off-white, which is just hard to read. So if you come through here and you say, hey, you know what, instead I'm just going to make this white, but I'm also going to make it bold. That's going to be easier for people to read than the other. And now you can kind of see by comparison with the sign up for early access, that becomes hard to read. And this is a classic, we do this to ourselves, and maybe you don't want, you maybe want medium instead of bold. You definitely don't want regular, or worse, thin. That becomes basically illegible. So anyway, taking time to recognize that just because it looks like it's on a black background and it's white text that should read, right? Well, a lot of times designers do this off-white thing, and that's almost always a problem. So here are structural adjustments. So there's a couple things here. One is you decided to come in just underline this. It feels tacked on at the moment, and you know there's a number of ways that you could elevate this, but I do think that you don't the double line isn't really necessary. Now, if you wanted to be a little more expressive with it, and you were going to do the double line, what I would suggest doing is coming in and like, okay, so I'll do this one at 10, and so this one's at 10, and then the next line is just kind of it's lined up like that. The other thing I would consider doing, and this kind of combination, not sure why. I'll just group it so I can move it. The other thing I would consider doing is, just because it's this green doesn't mean it doesn't mean that you have to like make it black. You can still use color. What I'm really looking to do is I'm looking to identify and make that particular spot stand out. And just because it's green doesn't do that on its own, because these are also green. So like you're showing progress. There's lots of other things that we could do as well. We could change the dots. Like one thing that I saw that was pretty clever, that somebody had done, was they came through and they basically said, hey, you know what, I'm going to change these to arrows, and I'll make this one black, and basically they replaced the dots with arrows, and the arrows kind of pointed over to this one, and then you got over to the pizza tracker. I guess that's oh yeah, it's I thought it was a circle, but it's masked here. So anyway, but they had taken, they replaced the dots, and then they also made this bolder. So that's an option. There's a lot of different ways to solve this. You could spend all day just kind of working on the pizza tracker, and how do you identify that this is the spot that we're in. But this is just something to think about. And that's, again, that's directly from an example where it's a really bad visual display that's on an active working site. Here you've decided to exit out. That's fine. A lot of times, what you'll see here is you've got that grade. The question here is, is that bold enough? Should we be making it larger? And the other question is, does that call too much attention to it? Is this a situation where, we should be looking at it in a particular color? Should we do this in a color similar, and then have maybe some words over the top of it in a box? Is it a situation? No, again, this is one of those scenarios where, hey, we can solve this a billion different ways. But is this a situation where we put a box over the top of that, and then say not available or something? But anything that we do here is better than just graying it out, which is, I can't tell you how many times I've been at a restaurant and seen the great, you could do it like 92% seems to be pretty popular based on the portfolio, the prototype work I was doing yesterday, looking at cell design. But you could do something like that and say, and I'll come in here and copy where's the crispy tacos? I'll copy this, pull it down. Currently not available. And I've said this before. Every time I work on this exercise, I do something slightly different. So I can guarantee I haven't done this one before. But this sort of approach, you could stylize it however you want. Do you put that in white? I probably wouldn't, because now I'm getting into accessibility concerns, unless, I dropped that down. Now I don't have so many accessibility concerns. But, it's the same idea. It's the same idea, except it gives you a little more clarity. This says currently not available. This, we'll change it back to the colors you had. That could mean canceled. Like, not currently not available, not out of the parts. It's just like, we don't do that anymore. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Lots of different things to consider. The biggest miss here, like, this is all opinion. The biggest miss here was over here on this one, because that second piece just wasn't legible. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap it up for today's edition of the Feedback Loop. So good to have Alfonso and Abby along for the ride. If you're looking to get into elevate your design career, consider A, subscribing to the YouTube channel. You'll be notified when we go live and when we post new videos. Or B, get in here and get feedback on your own work. Listen to the students that are already here for what new Pragmatic is doing for them. All right, folks, I'll talk to you later.